welcome. I'm just so incredibly excited for this conversation today and for everyone here in the room. I'm Tiffany Ana López. I'm Dean of the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, and it is a great delight to be co-hosting this panel. I'm hosting and co-moderating with my wonderful friend and colleague, Talena Mara from Segerstrom Center for the Arts. And we would like to welcome you. This is a part of a conversation that we've been having about the importance of uplifting and preparing teaching artists to enter into Orange County and beyond, thinking about Proposition 28, but most importantly, thinking about for students here in the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, being able to launch into a real vibrant career opportunities immediately to put their talents that they've learned in preparing as artists and creative leaders immediately to impact in our community. In addition to being Dean of the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, I'm also a dramaturg, a theater artist and scholar, and I'm also have experience as a teaching artist myself, as well as somebody who has been deeply impacted throughout my life by teaching artists. I would not be here if it wasn't for free public arts programming while I was growing up. I'm somebody who left home as a teenager, and that's another story. But it was being exposed to the arts in the community and teaching artists who were going and being a part of programming in arts, art spaces, parks, museums, public libraries that deeply impacted my life and helped pave the road for me to be here today. I want to, in addition to welcoming everyone, I want to signal some very special guests here in the house. I want to thank our team at the Segerstrom Center for the Arts and the Claire Trevor School of the Arts for all the work that they've done to help bring us into this room together. I want to give some special thank yous and shout outs, first of all, to Casey Ritz, President and CEO of Segerstrom Center of the Arts, being here with us today. I want to also give a shout out and thank you to Scott Fitzpatrick, Director of Visual and Performing Arts for the Orange County Department of Education, and his team for being here today. And I also want to thank one of my UCI colleagues who's also deeply invested in thinking about teaching artistry in the realm of museum cultures, Kim Kanatani, Director of the Institute and Museum for California Art, and just an amazing collaborator thinking about how together we can be shaping creative leaders in our community here in Orange County. This is going to be a approximately 2-hour journey, structured very much like a 3-act play. The first act will be our panel sharing their wisdom and their experiences and information about teaching artistry. Then Act 2 will be your engagement with us through the question and answer and dialogue period. And then the third act will be our connecting together over a reception and having the opportunity for deeper conversation, but most importantly, connecting and meeting with one another. So with that, I take us into Act 1. I would like to introduce Talena Mara, and I'm going to read her robust bio so that you get a real sense of her as someone who's brought a great and deep sense of knowledge and passion to building teaching artistry. And I always think about, with these programs, there's always somebody in the administrator's role, in the teacher role, thinking about how do we build this at scale to have impact. So Talena has spent more than 2 decades in education, arts administration, and community development. She served as the inaugural Vice President of Education at the Segerstrom Center for the Arts since 2009, where she leads education programming serving 350,000 people annually across Southern California. Prior to arriving in California, Talena served as faculty and department chair at the Juilliard School in New York City for 16 years and has taught or mentored every level of student throughout her career. She also served as director of education at New York City Opera and on the faculty of the City University of New York. Talena taught on the graduate faculty at the Manhattan School of Music, where she also led educational outreach efforts in New York City schools and community organizations, and prepared graduate students as effective teaching artists. Having spent years working in innovative collaborations with the New York City Department of Education, Talena was invited by Yale University to provide leadership for New Haven public school reform projects and for similar projects for Philadelphia public schools. She's presented at United Nations diplomatic events held in New York City and Washington, D.C., where she shared her research on the creative process and the influence it affords cultural diplomacy efforts in community building. She has also served as an advisor and guide for a wide range of educators, including teaching artists and superintendents, administrators, classroom teachers, curriculum specialists, each of whom share a common interest in building connections between the arts and other subjects in creating sustainable arts programs in schools and throughout school districts. She has often worked with national and international organizations in defining and applying the influence the arts have on classroom management, learning, and community development. Talena holds a Master of Science, Business in Organizational Leadership, a Master of Music degree in Vocal Performance, bachelor's degrees in Music Education and in Vocal Performance, and is a credentialed music educator. Please join me in welcoming my co-moderator, Talena Mara. And Talena's going to now turn to introducing our teaching artist panelists.
We are so pleased today to be here with you, all of us are, and couldn't be happier to have you here. By the way, thank you, Tiffany. That's a long bio. Thank you. Thank you. We are really happy to be here with you today, and I have kind of the rock star A-team along with me to talk with you as far as teaching artists are concerned. There's probably not a question you can ask that they can't answer in ways that will be helpful to you. And I'm just so pleased that we're all here together on the stage today. And we're going to take a moment to talk a little bit and to meet each of them. I'd like to start with Andrew Grueschow. And Andrew has been working with the center, and I know with the LA Music Center for a large number of years. Andrew, tell them just a little bit about your background and what you're doing on your average day.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Talena. So I have been with the center for a few decades, also with a couple of other organizations in Los Angeles that do the work of a teaching artist. And in addition to that, I teach up at CalArts, an arts university in Valencia. I teach there in the African Music and Dance program, World Percussion. I also teach pedagogy up there. So this whole idea of learning and teaching is something that's very, very dear to me. In terms of what my average day looks like, it will typically start in the schools, working with anywhere from TKs all the way on through like maybe 5th or 6th graders, where I'll go in and do some workshops with the students, percussion-based workshops. I'm a percussionist, so we're always in the world of drumming. Might see 3 or 4 classes, and then we'll pack up my gear and drive up to Valencia to CalArts and drum some more. There, of course, now I'm working with adults, most of whom have been practicing music all of their lives. But I'm always struck with how incredibly similar the work is. Of course, the content is a lot more challenging in terms of what we're diving into at CalArts. But I get to spend my whole day drumming and teaching, which is, for me, amazing. And the last thing I'll say, I mean, one of the reasons I so appreciate your being here is, for me, this whole idea of being a teaching artist, it kind of it allowed me to sort of fulfill this mantra that a great friend of mine, a percussionist in Brazil, laid on me, which we were in Brazil, we were touring, and he said, I just want to play music I love with people I love. That's it. And teaching has afforded me that luxury, right? When a gig comes that I'm not really feeling, or that's maybe with a group that I'm not that connected with, I can pass. I can pass because I love to teach and I have my teaching. And it has really allowed me to keep that performing side in this really pure place of just playing music I love with people I love.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrew. It's lovely to hear you talk about your work in that way. Next, I'd like to introduce you to some of you may know this person right here. She is a UCI graduate, and her name is Chantrell Lewis. Chantrell, tell us a little bit about your average day, please.
All right. Hi, everybody. Some of you may know me as Shani. Most of you probably know me as Shani. An average day for me usually looks like teaching. I'm actually getting my credential currently, so I go to class still. And I'm still actively performing, so some evenings I'm in rehearsal or I'm making time to learn new music. So I really love teaching. I teach for Segerstrom Center's Arts Teach program, and this is now my 3rd year with the Disney Musicals in Schools program. So we go into a school after school hours, and we are producing sustainable musical theater. So this year my school is doing Finding Nemo. So we're having a ton of fun with that. This is I believe it's the 1st year that it's in the canon, so we're having a lot of fun with the music of that show. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that I'm able to teach somewhat full-time. I'm able to still be a student somewhat part-time, and I'm still able to perform as often and as frequently as I'd like to. So yeah, that's usually what my days consist of.
Thank you, Shani. And next we have someone who we all love, and she works with us so often on so many different projects. You wouldn't believe the things that our friend Ellen Schulze, also known as the Puppet Lady, can do. So Ellen, tell us a little bit about your work, please.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. And thank you all for inviting me over. Yes, I am the Puppet Lady, and I have been a teaching artist for over 30 years. A long time. Yes, she's old. Anyway. I like the typical day thing. My typical day when I am teaching is loading up the van and getting to the school, unloading the van, putting everything on the cart, and going into the different schools and teaching puppetry. And I do a lot of different kinds of things when I teach puppetry. Sometimes it's an introduction to puppetry where I just show them different puppets. Or we make very simple puppets, maybe do an in-class performance. But what I really, really love doing, and I get to do about, maybe a dozen or so of these a year, is a full-blown puppet culmination on stage with full curtains and lights and music and audience, and where we can really strut our stuff. And like, for instance, right now I have a double residency, 2 schools in one day. And it's 5 classes, and we're rolling into rehearsal. We're going to have performances in the middle of December. So right now, I have 150 student puppets in my studio that I am just doing the final touches on to get ready for rehearsal. So there's like monsters in there and Muppets, and nobody wants to go into the studio because they don't know what's going to be staring at them. But I just love what I do, either teaching or in the studio prepping. I love it. I love it. Would do nothing else.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much. And finally, here next to me is our wonderful Shyamala Moorty. She's been working for the center quite a long time now as well, a very long time, in fact. And Shyamala, tell us a little bit about your teaching, artist work, and what you're doing on an average day when you're working.
Sure. So yeah, I started at Segerstrom, I think 1998. And I was with a group called Aman, and Aman was international dance and music. And so we would perform in schools, and then we also would teach. And it was really neat being able to teach dances from different cultures. And as I grew in that role as a teaching artist with very wonderful mentors in Amman, I started to develop my own curriculum and add it in. I'm like, oh, well, I have a little specialty over here in Indian dance, right? So let's do some garbaras with them. Let's do some bhangra. And so I started adding in some of my own curriculum and really figuring out how to sculpt it well. And eventually, Amman dissolved as a performance group and kept teaching. But they still needed a show at some point. And so they grabbed me to create a new show, and thus was born a new group called the Dancing Storytellers. And so the Dancing Storytellers, we do Indian mythology and dancing in schools, and now all that teaching is going into there. And I can't tell you my average day of teaching anymore because I've trained other dancers to do the teaching now. I'm a mom, and so I have to get to my kid to school at 8 a.m., and that's often when the start time would be for teaching at schools. So it's been really wonderful to be able to take a step back and really think about the skills that I learned so long ago, and also the things that are growing and changing. Every once in a while we get trainings. And I do teach at Cal State Long Beach, so I'm more with college students as well, teaching choreography and theory there.
Thank you, Shyamala. Now, so you see all these diverse backgrounds sitting on the stage and making a living doing what they love, and not all of it, some of it maybe, is on the stage or in the pit, and some of it is not. And so I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Lopez to continue with this conversation.
Thank you so much. Well, you can see why we're so excited about this conversation. You're getting a sense of, with Talena's bio, just the vast richness of experience that people bring to their work as teaching artists, and thinking about how are we building impact, and then hearing from each of our teaching artists who have been brought into the Segerstrom Center of the Arts, which is the nation's largest, most impactful teaching artistry program, and we're just very, very blessed to be working as collaborators. So that this is what's exciting. I was about this conversation when I was speaking with each of our teaching artist panelists, had said to them, well, in a lot of ways this panel is about you're getting to share with the students and our audience what you wished you had known much earlier in your career. So you get a sense of just all the representation of the arts and how they're practicing that. I thought it would be important to begin with the fundamental question, what is a teaching artist? What is teaching artistry? So I'm going to kick it back to Talena and to start us with that question, and then hear from our teaching artists.
Thank you, thank you. A teaching artist, for those of you who may not have who really don't know much about the field or much about what this looks like on a day-to-day basis, a teaching artist can be, well, let's just say if you're an artist and you love sharing what you do with other people, and you want to train yourself to be particularly good at knowing your audience in a classroom setting, in a community setting, in some other setting other than just on the stage or, again, in the pit. If you love sharing what you do with other people, there is a pathway for you, and it is teaching artistry, and it gives you the opportunity then to not only enjoy the gifts that you have spent an immense amount of time and effort on throughout your life, but it also gives you the opportunity to share those skills sometimes, and sometimes not skills. It's sometimes other kinds of things, like storytelling about where what you've done with your life, what you've done with your talent, how these talents impact others. It's not always just sharing in the same way that, say, a music teacher or a certified theater teacher or any other kind of certified teacher shares. You're not always sharing sort of curriculum standards, the things that students are required to know. Sometimes you're also like collaborating with one of those teachers to share those areas where the arts connect with other subjects as well. So I think we all know, for those of us who are musicians, how closely tied music theory is to math. And sometimes the best way to help kids or students or anybody really, it's not just kids, understand those connections is not by just watching or learning how to do the math, but learning how to do it in another way. Andrew, I know, has a particularly good exercise for this kind of thing that he takes students through all the time. So what is a teaching artist? A teaching artist can be anyone who is interested in sharing your work and doing so in creative ways that you may not think of when you're just standing in a studio teaching someone to play their instrument or to direct them on a stage. And there is a pathway where to be honest, all of the faculty at all of the conservatories in the country are really teaching artists. They're teaching artists who are teaching, they're working artists who are also teaching. So you can carve a pathway where you can do your art in the way that you would like to do it. If you want to play in an orchestra, if you want to have a solo career, you can do that. And as Andrew has said, there is another pathway that helps you build a life around the arts that is more than just one singular journey. And it gives you many lenses to look at your work through. Anybody want to add something to that? What is a teaching artist? Andrew? Yeah, Chantrell, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I would also add to that a teaching artist to me is being an artist. I always say I'm an artist full-time and I'm a teacher full-time. And I'm able to take things that I'm learning like in real time in the real world and bring it right into my classroom the next day. And I'm also a conservatory teacher right now with Orange County School of the Arts. And I'm now, instead of having to create a sort of general agenda of what I want to teach, I'm having to create these lesson plans with the standard alignments and with all of the VAPA and all of these things that I knew as an artist. And I actually got my first taste of pedagogy at UCI. I got my Master's of Fine Arts in Acting here, spring 2022. But I got my first taste of pedagogy here, and that was in the acting area, and I was teaching some of the acting undergraduate courses. But I just didn't realize there were so many specifics when it comes to creating a curriculum that meets standards, and it has to fall in alignment with that. As a teaching artist, you don't necessarily have to lean into those standards as specifically, but one thing that I'm learning now as I'm currently taking these classes every week is that the things that I was doing as just a teaching artist, not a conservatory teacher, they were in alignment with standards. They were in alignment with everything that these students are supposed to be learning in regards to visual and performing arts already. So yeah, I would say being a teaching artist is just being a full-time teacher and also being a full-time artist and just letting those worlds really cross each other and living in that and giving to your students what you're learning from both worlds.
Thank you. Andrew?
Obviously, agree with everything that's been said. I think one distinction that I would want to draw for those of you who are maybe hearing this term for the first time or thinking about some of these ideas for the first time is being a teaching artist is different than being the music teacher at the school. Being a teaching artist is different than maybe being the full-time arts teacher at the school, right? When I'm going in to do my music workshops, I'm not sort of charged with like staffing up the band or making sure that all the songs are ready, you know, for the appropriate time of year, or that. And I have a couple of good friends who are the full-time music teacher and absolutely love it, right? But that's a little bit of a different career path than being a teaching artist, where it's really about you thinking about your own work, right? When I came on to working with some of the different organizations I worked with, I got to craft a residency around things I was passionate about. And I had to start to think a little bit about creating entry points for a third grader into my world as an artist, or for a kindergartner into my world as an artist. And how could I start to engage them in meaningful arts experiences if maybe they hadn't all been playing music their whole lives like my students up at CalArts had, or if there's maybe no gear at the room, right? And this really forced me to really go kind of 10,000 feet up and look down at the experience of an artist. But there was something beautiful about having so much control over what it was that I wanted to do with the students, so that you really have this opportunity to bring your passion into the classroom and turn the students onto that, right? And all of you are here because you had this experience with some other teacher, right, that flipped your switch as an artist and really kind of ignited this fire in you. And so I wanted to make that distinction. And then the other side of it as well is just the variety of the work, right? So I feel like a lot of us so far have been speaking a little bit to going into the schools. I know I have, and doing workshops with students. That is one side of working as a teaching artist. There are opportunities to go in and work with classroom teachers, right? If you have strategies where maybe a classroom teacher that, again, isn't as deeply steeped in the art form as you are, but they have some basic knowledge and a willingness to give it a go, and you can give them some strategies how they can bring arts into the classroom. There are opportunities to write curriculum for school districts. There are opportunities to train at district levels, to train other teaching artists. And so this whole idea of what it means to be a teaching artist, I feel from maybe 30, 35 years ago when I started in this work to now, has really evolved from like going out and doing workshops, which is still my favorite part of the gig, but has now really turned into a proper career that is totally multifaceted and as deep as you want to get. I mean, you heard, you know, Talena's bio, and you know, like there are teaching artists out there that are presenting to the United Nations and doing this incredibly high-level work. As deep as you want to go with that, the sky's really the limit now, which I think is something that's very exciting. It's really become a proper career.
I wonder if Ellen and Shyamala, you could share to make it specific, and thank you so much for sharing the specificity of launching into the program. But I was wondering if you two could also add specific things that you had, that were your passion in your practice as artists, and how you share them as teaching artists, and how you launched into the path working in the teaching artistry program.
Okay, I got this. I love theater, specifically puppet theater. And I got my puppetry chops with the Great Arizona Puppet Theater in Phoenix, Arizona. And there was just this, it was an ensemble, and it was a wild way to make theater, and it was the only way I knew how. You know, we would have like deadlines, and we would be up all night working on things and getting ideas and brainstorms. And I discovered that like a puppet show could be so fluid because it could change from, you know, just from a comment, you know, when you're planning it, when you're rehearsing it, it's like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's go with that. And I love the elastic feel of it. And the creativity and the storm of ideas you get. So when I am working with students, and we're setting up like, you know, a residency where I'm there for like 12 sessions, and we have a production meeting where I come in and I tell them, well, we have nothing right now, but by the time I leave, we will know what we're going to do. And we just open up a discussion as to what we can do. And some of the ideas, hello, are just bouncing off the wall. But the electricity in the room is incredible. Kids are being heard, even though they're like crazy ideas. I especially listen to those because, that resonates with me. But they're being heard, and it's like they've kind of like shook off some shackles or something. And their eyes are big and bright, and they want to be a part of this whole process. And then we get to the end, and then we have the result of all of our ideas, and we have a theme that we're going to do. And it's like all this, it's not chaos, but all this, strange ideas that are just not meeting, then all of a sudden everything comes together. And the kids experience that. And the fact that they're being heard, with ideas. Because as a child, I was not heard. And when I'm working with kids, I want them to know that I hear them, that what they have to say to me matters. But yeah, it's that whole, the life of theater that I like to share with the kids. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, to me, like teaching artistry is a lot, or just any artistry is about finding something really meaningful. And like I'm hearing that in what you're saying, it's like that spark, that moment. And so when I started working with Aman, here we were teaching these folk dances, and in one sense, there's this sense of community that is developed, which is really beautiful. Because we're all creating something together. There's a formation, there's a way that it goes, there's an in and out. It doesn't work unless everybody's in on it, right? So there's this beautiful idea of working together as community. And then a couple of us newer artists had more creative movement backgrounds. So to me, what was exciting me or driving me was not just like, here's a traditional form, go do it, but here's a traditional form, how can you relate to it? Like we learned tankobushi, like a Japanese obon dance, and like what is it about, and why are they doing it? And how could you create movements that would be about maybe work that you do in your everyday life or that you see around you in your world? So like starting to relate it to our worlds that we are in now. And that's what a lot I do in my own artistry as a contemporary Indian dancer. I'm based or rooted in a tradition, but I'm expanding out of it to make it make sense to the world that I live in and the political situations that we're in. And so I think, yeah, that to me is what is very meaningful. And I love creating curriculum. It's so fun making it relate to math and like science, and like I think probably the last thing I did was the life cycle of the butterfly. So we've got the little egg and having all the kids do hand gestures and the little like caterpillar and all the little parts of the life cycle of the butterfly can be so easily done through dance, and then having them create their own life cycles through movement. It's really exciting to see that creative spark that you were talking about. Yeah.
It's so interesting listening to all these brilliant people talk, because what it makes me realize is there are many people who love to do what their art form is. They love to act, they love to sing, and they do it their entire lives, and their focus is completely there. I think for me, what I'm hearing here is sort of a commonality of a theme that sort of draws people to the idea of not just going through the creative process themselves. I mean, most of us have spent our lives being creative. I see my colleague Maritza Rubio right up here. She's a writer. It's not different for her. I feel there are probably athletes in the room as well. It's not a lot different. The creative process is about starting with fear, not sure if you can do this, not sure if you really want to do this, and pushing through to, there is almost inevitably a spot where you think, I am not doing this, I'm stopping here, no more of this. And if you push right through that moment to the other side is when it all becomes apparent and you begin to really move forward. I think what I hear here is those of us who have been on the risers in our high school choir thinking this music is too hard, I cannot learn it, and having a teacher who helped push you through that moment, and you just keep going, and it takes you weeks and weeks to learn a piece, and then suddenly it is your favorite piece because you spent all of that time pushing through. I think at some point, I'm a classical singer, but at some point it just gradually became more important to me to help people through that creative process than it was for me to be in the creative process. And I think that's what I'm hearing here is the joy and the beauty and the absolute necessity of having people who love the process, helping you through the process, is what teaching artistry gives to you. And that's an important thing for all of us, I think.
I love that. It connects to this burning question I have, which is sharing with us about the ecosystem of building the teaching artist. I mean, that's our passion with our collaboration is thinking about from the university into the Segerstrom, into the community, right? Would love to have all of you share about the ecosystem from Talena, your vision of being able to have the teaching artist program to put in mass great numbers of teaching artists into our community. And then I'd love to hear from our panelists, for each of you to share about what was the call for the teaching artist that you answered? What was that call for the job? What did that look like? And how did you, what did you know you were prepared, how your experiences had prepared you, experiences as a student in the university, as artists? How were you prepared to answer that call? And then how did the program train you to then launch into the community to help in fortifying that ecosystem of teaching artists to impact the students who will one day be in our chairs? Right.
I think it's important to know, and I'm going to just level set a little. Some of you may be teaching artist experts out there, and if you are, come on up. We'll pull up a chair for you. But others may know absolutely nothing about it. So let me just level set a little bit. Most organizations like Segerstrom Center for the Arts, Pacific Symphony, so discipline-specific organizations and performing arts centers like ours, where we represent all of the disciplines in our work, most all of them are using teaching artists and have been for many, many decades now. This field really began, I feel like I kind of came up with the field. I'm a little bit later than when it started, but what really happened is across the country, schools began cutting the arts in their schools. Now, because I am a certified teacher, and I want to make this clear, I have never wanted to replace arts teachers in the schools. I think probably every single person in this room has benefited from an arts teacher in their lives. And there is no way that a teaching artist or a performing arts center or an orchestra can replace what those teachers do in school on a daily basis. But what did happen, particularly I know New York City because I was there for years and here in California as well, is that the organization sort of came to the rescue in the 70s when arts began disappearing in classrooms. Now, we can't spend any time, I'm sure, today on Prop 28, but we think there is an answer, so yay. We hope that in the next decade, all of those all of those teachers will be back, and these programs can then really work with those teachers to enhance and engage the work that they're already doing. But you should know that no matter where you are, arts organizations like ours, and like all the discipline-specific organizations, need teaching artists. They want teaching artists, and we are dependent on teaching artists for many, many of our programs. We have, depending on the year, depending on who I'm talking to on the 4th floor of our building, it's somewhere between 70 and 100 teaching artists and teaching artist groups each year at Segerstrom Center for the Arts. So this is a viable field of work for artists. It is an area in which faculty and administrators in universities should be sort of helping their students understand, and it's very much a part of what is available to artists nowadays. So hearing the call, it just came naturally for me because I was early on and I just began understanding that my love for teaching could be used in this way. And developing many, many different lenses through which to see this work over the course of time as a certified teacher, as an artist, as part-time, it wasn't even a part-time, but a quick principal in a school at one period of time. Also, just understanding so many sort of aspects of how to be on the stage, those kinds of things. It all came together in my love for teaching, and I gradually loved teaching more than performing. That's how it came together for me. But these folks all have different stories, and Shani, I know you have an interesting one you might like to share.
All right, I guess I'll go first. I'll start by saying I started performing when I was 8. And I remember going up on the stage and having my pretty dress on and singing in another language. I had no idea what I was singing about, and then, taking a bow and then walking off the stage. And that's what I did for a very long time. I started with classical voice, so my background is in opera first. And as a kid, I just was doing what my family wanted me to do. And there was really nothing, I don't think there was anything I was really gaining from it other than technique until a couple years in. I have this amazing uncle who I always talk about, who was a fabulous actor and an amazing opera singer, and he owned a performing arts school, DML School of Music. And so when I was a child, I was around 14, I would go to his studio in the summer and I would help him run his school. We would bring in all the kids from the neighborhood that couldn't do any other programming. They would come to us, we would sing, we would dance, we would do karaoke, we would have all kinds of all kinds of fun together. And while I was still a kid, because he was my uncle, I was kind of like a teacher at 14. We would feed the kids and they would go home. And I think that that's when I really realized that it was the collaboration that was what drew me in, and that's what continued to draw me in and make me want to be an artist. And so I studied musical theater, and I struggled because it felt like it was all about me. Even in a production, it still felt like I was so focused on, okay, where do I go next? What's my next cue? I never was able to really give in the way that I feel like I'm able to give now, my artistry. I started working for Segerstrom while I was in grad school here, and I actually applied to be an intern, and then I got a phone call or an email from some lovely people here that said, we want you to come and teach. And I was like, absolutely, because by the time I got to grad school here, I had been volunteering for every teaching artist program, shelter, school, after-school program from Northeast Ohio to Chicago that I could, because it was feeding me, and it was literally giving me life. And I realized why my uncle has done what he's done for so long. When you're able to see people children be children. A lot of the work that I do is in low-income areas. So when I'm from Cleveland, by the way. The Browns just won a game, so you know. I was working in the public housing authorities, so places that, you normally won't even drive through. That's where I was working, and I would go in every single day, and we would put together shows. We would do shows, and we would title them like Little Riding in the Hood. Like, we would just do stuff like that. But the kids kept showing up every single day. They got to know each other. They got to spend time together. They got to build a community and build a family. And so that was when I was in undergrad, but that was really what secured it for me when I knew that I always wanted to do this work. I always wanted to be able to give. I feel like my artistry is very fruitful, and I still sing on stage. I still go up on stage and do my arias and do my musical theater songs, and they're still fun and beautiful for me individually, but what I feel like really feeds me, and also for anyone in here who's a student, you will have bills when you leave here, and you'll have to pay them. So it feeds me as an artist, and it also, I'm also able to pay my bills with my artistry. And so that's kind of when I knew that I always wanted to be a teaching artist. I never wanted to be one or the other, and so that's how I got my start with Segerstrom, with the Disney Musicals in Schools and their Arts Teach program. And what I really admire and love about Segerstrom is that a lot of the focus, at least in the work that I've done, is in communities where arts is not always accessible. Sometimes it's in places where it's not accessible at all. And so sometimes I'm that teaching artist that gets to go in and give those kiddos their first art class, their first music class, or their first drama class. And it's just about giving of the fruit that my art gives me. And so I have a really, really fulfilling career, and who knows where else it will lead, but right now I'm feeling really full from it.
Yeah. Andre?
In terms of like the ecosystem or entering into the work, for me it was graduating from CalArts, where I teach now, with a very specialized degree in West African and North Indian classical music. And just, CalArts for me was magic, because it was 4 years of like, do whatever you want. Don't think about the real world. Even when time came around for me to do my graduation recital, wasn't really that worried about if people liked the music that I was composing. I was composing complicated music for my own amazement, and loved my 4 years there, right? And then I graduated, and this kind of reality of those bills you were just mentioning set in, right? And I mean, I literally had moments post-graduation where I was like, how could CalArts do this? Like, how could they confer these degrees upon me, and how am I going to monetize my skill set? And very fortunately, through a percussion group I was playing in, heard this teaching, there's this thing out there called teaching artistry. And the group was started by a gentleman who was very good friends with someone named Greg Johnson, who is a genius at this work. And he, my friend was kind of like, oh, you should check out what Greg is doing. And so I went to see him teach, and immediately, within 5 minutes, realized, like, I can never do this, because he was just this sort of ball of charisma. He's one of these people where, like, everybody's instantly laughing when they look at him, and they don't even know why, and it's just all so natural to him. And I was so not that, right? I was like the guy, like, put a drum in my hand and I'll go anywhere, but other than that, like, I'm just not that outgoing. And so after I watched him do his thing, I was like, Greg, I could never do that. And he was like, well, why? It's like, well, look at what you just did. And he was like, well, perfect. You're not supposed to do what I did, right? You're supposed to find your own way with it. And this was right around the time that a group I was playing was starting to tour a lot. And this was literally the one thing that I could find where he was like, oh, if these rosters bring you on, they want professional artists that are out there doing the work of artists. They'll book around your tour dates, and you'll get paid more an hour than, I kind of spent the summer moving giant inflatable things at kids' parties. And so I honestly couldn't believe that this was a career path that, like, CalArts did not make me aware of. I felt a bit shortchanged. Like, how is this even possible that I graduated from this institution and I never heard the words teaching artist? And it was a long road, right? I mean, it was not the kind of thing where I, like, met with Greg and 2 weeks later I was in a school working. I really had to work for it and put lesson plans together and go to different organizations, go through an audition process with the organizations, go through artist training that the organizations had, and excuse me, really found a love of pedagogy, found a love, a fascination with like, how do we get our minds around new things, right? And just really saw it as something that regardless of whether I was working in a more formal setting like university, I always knew in some way I would be teaching, because that's what we do as artists. We're a link in the chain to information that was shared with us. And then it just continued to evolve through there, being very fortunate to have performing arts institutions that just kind of took a chance on a new graduate, which is getting more and more challenging now. There are a lot of places that are like, we want experience, right? And so I'm always encouraging my students, take the TA-ship at CalArts, find opportunities to teach, find after-school programs, get some of that experience under your belt, because for me, the beautiful thing about it was not an either or. I really had like years of robust touring and a very thriving, and I still tour and play, but now with kids, I don't want to be gone as much as I was before. But this work as a teaching artist allowed me to not compromise my artistic career, to take the tours that were coming, to take the great gigs. And when the tours weren't there, I was still okay, right? And I was spending my day standing across from either a kindergarten or a third grader, flipping that switch for them, right? Like I remember when somebody said to me, like, you know, Mozart had a music teacher. Shakespeare had an English teacher, right? We don't know who the kids are that we're standing across from, and there's something sort of magical about that. And then from there, it just, you know, like I said, opportunities continue to grow, the field continued to evolve, and all the way down to my teaching at CalArts, which when I put my CV together and was going from special faculty to regular faculty, and there was sort of a national search, and honestly, when I was putting my CV together, originally I leaned back a little bit on the teaching artist work with it. I really thought, let me focus on the performing and concerts and touring and film work. And right towards the end, I was like, well, it's the CV, let me just put everything in there. In the end, when I had my final interview with the provost, it was the teaching artist work that pushed me over the hump. Because CalArts was saying, you know, we want more career readiness for our students, and we see this as a pathway for them to be able to have active performing careers and also be able to monetize their skill set. And so, of course, we love all the, you know, the Ghanaian drumming and all the specialized knowledge, but it's this particular thing that kind of pushed over the hump. And so it's one of the reasons why today was so exciting for me, is that I felt like when I was going to school, I never heard these words. Right, but here you are, right in the middle of it, and having an opportunity to hear that this is like one of the threads that you can weave together in your artistic reality when you graduate and your financial reality when you graduate, that can really be incredibly liberating.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll hear, we're talking a lot about in the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, creative wayfinding, and it's really the way that we're working to signal these kinds of opportunities. There's many opportunities we want our students to know about, including these, so that you can find your path to be able to immediately launch upon graduation and find gainful employment opportunities that enhance your sense of what it is that you came here to hone as an artist and a creative leader. So I love that signaling about how this is a complementary work to enrich and enhance your vision and your voice as an artist, but also to be able to launch into work that is a complementary aspect of what you're doing as an artist. I saw you nodding very much hearing Andrew Shyamala. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how this work complements your own artistic practice, especially also that you're at a university. And I'm interested to hear from you and Ellen, as well as Shani and Andrew. What do you wish you had known earlier to prepare you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about what I wish I knew just right after I tell how I got into it. They might be related. So I feel like I always follow my interests, and I was like performing with some people at UCLA and something, there was this woman who was like a guest who'd come in, and she was a tap dancer, and I don't know anything about tap dance, and I'm like talking to her, and oh, she does clogging with this group called Amon, and they're all performing and touring, and I'm like, well, what is that? What? And so I just kept asking her questions, and I was just so interested and curious that she remembered it. And then when I was graduating a few months later, it turned out that they were looking for a dancer, and she was like, I got a call on my answering machine from the director at the time, and they were like, oh, do you want to audition? And I'm like, well, do I? Of course I do. I don't know what you do, but I want to. So I did, and Amon, and this is about the changing of the arts funding too, and the landscape. At the time, Amon was performing in schools 4 days a week, and 1 day a week we were the teaching artists. And then over my time, as the arts funding got cut, we began teaching 4 or 5 days a week and performing maybe a couple times a month. So it really transformed, and I feel like we're in another one of those transformative moments with Proposition 28, hopefully in the other direction. But so my teaching experience kind of built through that time, just from little taste to like much bigger over time. And I didn't know I was going to do it. That was just what all Amon dancers did, right? So I didn't even know that was my calling. And what I wish I would have known, I think in the beginning, I tried so hard to make it fun and to show them by my own enthusiasm how fun it is. Now, as teaching artists, we are often teaching 5 or 6 classes in a row, maybe with a lunch break. 6th class, I can't even remember what I was saying anymore. Did I already teach this? What was going on? I'm like, oh, totally. And I go home and I crash out, right? No time for my artistry. I was exhausted, right? So that was like, I gave too much. And I love doing the teaching, and I love like gathering the sweet stories, and like when it's so clear you touch somebody, or their little aha, or the cute, funny things that happen every day. I would always collect them. But what I did, it took me a really long time to realize, was to pace myself. And, but also when I see Rosina teach, she was my first teacher, Rosina Didick. She was my first teacher in Amon to teach me how to teach, and it didn't compute to me till much, much later. I saw her years later teaching, and it finally hit. She's not showing them enthusiasm. She's just creating a clear structure and a clear place for this artistic experience to happen. And she's not blowing out a lot of energy. She's very calm. And she's really holding the entire space very easily. And the kids are having so much fun. And I'm like seeing them. They're just like full of life and so happy. And I'm like, oh, she didn't have to show them it's fun. She's just creating the space for them to have fun. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I know, right? 20 years into my career or something. But that's something I wish I would have known earlier.
God, so many things. Probably the thing I wish I would have known was that it wasn't a stepping stone, becoming a teaching artist. Because, when I started, I was still kind of loose in my career. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but it was theater, and I loved teaching. I went to college and majored in special education and got very interested in neurology, of all things. Think how many lives I've saved by not being a neurologist. Anyways, so I had the teaching chops, like how to put together a lesson plan. And so I kind of had that in my back pocket. And I thought, well, okay, I had this offer. It was Jim Gamble, and coming to me and with the Great Arizona Puppet Theater, how would you like to teach workshops in LA? And I'm like, oh, okay. I was at like loose ends, and I jumped. I just, in a month, I was packed up and moved. Had no idea, you guys are young. You have that belief in yourself, and you jump many times. And this is what I did. I jumped, and thinking, well, okay, I can do this for a while. and it's been over 30 years. And I wouldn't do anything else. Because it's like I was uniquely built for this with my background in education and with my love of theater, specifically puppetry, and storytelling, and all. Hello, this had a, hello, this is me. I had really no other choice, but the fact that it is not a stepping stone. It could be. It could be. I know a lot of artists that teach a little bit, and then they're off doing movies or whatever, and I'm like, I love where I am as a teaching artist. Being, with kids, experiencing the creativity, the joy, being able to provide the opportunity for kids to be on stage and experience the audience's applause and to see their own creations, the puppets that they've built, elicit a response on stage. Doesn't get any better than that.
Just so you know, Ellen, we love where you are as a teaching
Oh,
artist
thank
as
you.
well. As a matter of fact, we love where all of you are as
Oh,
teaching
thank you.
artists, so thank you.
This is a wonderful place to pivot into Act 2. In Act 1, you've heard from our incredible panelist of teaching artists from Talena. What is teaching artistry? How's one prepared into it? What kind of passion do they bring? What does the work look like on a daily basis? What do people wish they had known? What were things organically that when the opportunity came, their preparation, their insights, their specialization, they were all ready to activate it. And then thinking about this unique moment that we're in right now where we're getting this vocabulary, learning about this opportunity, because the whole journey of this panel is to share with you about this opportunity, but also to invite you to explore it, to consider it, to know what it is, to bring that to the work that you're doing right now. So with that, Act 2 is a space for you to ask the burning questions, the specific questions that you're sitting here that you want to know more of. So we're going to open it, and please say your question out loud, and you'll hear myself or Talena repeat it because we want to be able to get it into the archive document to share for others with our not having a mic in the audience. So just shout that out, and we'll repeat it. So who would like to open with the first question for our panel?
Yes, you can make a living at it.
Sarah.
So the Segerstrom Center for the Arts has an incredible teaching artist program, as we know. What are some other organizations that you can share in Orange County, from museums, visual arts, other performing arts centers that you know have teaching artist programs that may kind of broaden the understanding of not only Segerstrom being a destination for this great work, but others in Orange County?
So the question is, in addition to Segerstrom, what are our other arts organizations here in Orange County that have teaching artist programs and opportunities?
Well, certainly the Pacific Symphony has opportunity for artists who play instruments. I am aware also that the Philharmonic Society also uses some teaching artists. Many of our museums use teaching artists as well. And for those of you on the panel who work for other organizations, you may want to shout out a few names as well.
The Music Center
The
in Los
Music
Angeles.
Center, certainly.
There's a lot of private arts organizations out there. You can Google them.
Yeah.
don't know if
There's
they
lots of different things.
Still have it, but the Fullerton School District used to have their own teaching artist program called Arts Teach. No, sorry, not Arts Teach.
No,
That's-
I don't know
remember
that
what it's
program.
called.
Yeah.
But
I'm
they
not
had
sure
a
if that's
whole
still-
program. We did, a lot of the Amman artists, we did the whole district, like
Mhm.
week by week, yeah.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
if I remember the name, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll throw one more out there, which for me it took a little while to get going, but I do a fair amount of my work in the schools now not connected to any institution, where I maybe have had a relationship with the principal for a long time, had a relationship with a particular school district because I did some work with the district. And again, this wasn't I talked to my students at CalArts a little bit about marketing themselves. This can be a trickier way to start. One of the things that really facilitated the process for me was being on a roster at a place like the center, where there's an immediate assumption when people see that on your resume or bio, an immediate assumption of you've been vetted and the level of work is in a certain place. But you're not obligated to be connected to any kind of an institution, right? Now, of course, the challenge is marketing yourself and how to do that in a savvy way. So it can maybe be a little bit more challenging in terms of getting the ball rolling initially, but eventually, once you are on a couple of rosters and you have some connections, your resume is a little beefed up, you can go out there and really start to market yourself to schools. This does involve now dealing with the districts and wearing some of the hats that typically a place like the center would wear for you in terms of knowing what kind of insurance you need to carry and do you need a business license but in some cases it can be really worthwhile doing.
I remembered the name. It's called All the Arts for All the Kids, if it still exists.
Oh, yes.
You did that too? Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Does it still exist?
I'm not sure.
It's in Fullerton.
I haven't done a booking for them for a while.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a couple other programs I know of and organizations. The Arts and Learning Conservatory in Costa Mesa.
Oh.
They're having auditions right now for a show happening in the Barclay on January 13th. Dragon Kim Foundation, Dance Arts Academy, Hope Center for the Arts, and that's in Irvine. There's a program here. The program lead is right here in front of you. There's a ton of programs. Google will be your best friend in your search, and feel free to reach out to me because, you know, as an artist and a teaching artist, I'm always looking at things and going to performances and kind of writing down names in my phone, so I probably have some more there too. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question. So Google is your best friend. What would be the keywords?
I would search, what do I usually search? I usually search Orange County, teaching artist opportunity. I always type in Orange County artist openings. Sometimes I'll look up like adjunct openings, fall 2023. I always tend to put the year because sometimes like older posts will be up. I use, there's different resources, different organizations. You have an organization. I'm trying to get on your list so I can come to your meetings every month. Can you tell us the name from the OCD?
The Orange County Department of Education, we support conversations between districts and arts organizations.
Yeah.
Oh.
County is a resource.
Arts Orange County, Arts
Yeah.
Orange County.
Arts
There's
Orange
a
County
bunch,
and
yeah.
Orange County Department of Education, looking at both of those places for the work that they do, and the monthly and regular meetings to really facilitate these conversations. And then also, you've heard us refer to Proposition 28. That is in motion. There's a lot of meetings. We know that proposition is to support bringing more teaching artists and artists who teach art into the schools. So this conversation, we've been talking with Scott Fitzpatrick and the Orange County Department of Education to really think about how do we prepare for this? How do we begin to train and develop and pipeline these experts into the schools? And then here at the university, and then we're talking with Segerstrom because of their rich program, and then here at UCI, there's conversations here in the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, how we can really build that out, the teaching artistry, to think about how to be part of this ecosystem, right, and intentionally have those vibrant collaboration and partnerships into all the arts organizations here in Orange County, and then working collaboratively with the School of Education here at UCI to really think about that complementary but very different things about what it means to have an artist, somebody who's professionally an artist, thinking about how to teach their artistry, right, their pedagogical skills, versus someone who is trained as an educator and a teacher in K through 12 and has that teaching credential. Talena can talk well about the intersections, but those are two different things, and so we're working in the larger conversation, preparing for Prop 28 to really have this infrastructure built so that we can all activate it and do what I call this lattice work lift, that we have it built and we can all lift it forward as the opportunities and the support mechanisms become more legible.
I don't want this to get too complex, but in the 70s, when arts programs began disappearing in schools, began sort of being dropped away, there was kind of a cottage industry of organizations, arts organizations, that cropped up to sort of fill that need in schools, where the arts teachers had been left out of the conversation. So the certified teachers had been left out of the organizations, out of schools. I would suggest to you that as we are all arts lovers in this room, I've no doubt, think about the organizations you're working for when you get those jobs and when you search and when you meet with them and when you interview with them, and ask them how they plan to interact with Prop 28 and how important it is to them, to those organizations, that certified arts teachers be back in schools teaching standards for the arts. It's, to me, and I hope to you as well, it is as important for students who are going through their academic career now to have access to certified arts teachers. It is very, very important to me. And I hope that you will look for arts organizations who support that. There will be some who are getting an awful lot of work because there are no certified arts teachers in the schools. And then we all become a Band-Aid for a difficult situation that has been going on here since the 70s. So begin to have those conversations. You can still take the work, but be aware of the fact that really, as arts lovers, as we are in this room, our goal should be to have certified arts teachers back in schools for students to work with, and you can still be a teaching artist in those environments as well. It's about making sure that there's room for everyone in this conversation, I think.
And thinking about the impact, one of the questions I had was just the impact of a teaching artist. I mean this very seriously. I would not be here today if it wasn't for teaching artists in my community and the impact that they had in my life, because I came from a home filled with a lot of violence and trauma and instability, and here in these free public arts programs that had teaching artists in the community, arts recovers what violence takes away. It recovers your voice, your imagination. It teaches you have a right to your body. Other people will be interested in what you have to say, and that there's more than one story that you will live and tell in your life. So the impact of the teaching artists out in the community is deeply profound. You're hearing from me, decades into the future. I wasn't able to give that feedback to the teaching artists I had as a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, being left in the park or the public library to encounter the teaching artists. But that's the impact. I would not be here if it wasn't for those seeds, that there was more than one story I could live and tell in my life. So I would love to hear from you to share about how do you see the transformative impact of being a teaching artist? How do you see that?
I'll just say briefly, I taught in several Newark schools when I first moved to New York City. And Newark, we know that back during the race riots in the 60s, 70s, that LA was a really difficult place to be. Newark was the worst in the country, however, and it is filled with, at the time when I was teaching, Newark was filled with poverty and violence and really, really a difficult situation. And so I encountered many, many young people during my time in Newark, which was fairly short-lived, but the impact that the simplest artistic processes had on those students has been with me all of my life and beyond. Beyond just those experiences. But in Newark, I found the artistic, simple artistic processes, as simple as clapping rhythms and doing different rhythms with just 4 different groups and 4 different rhythms. It was life-changing, and sort of their day was completely motivated by something as simple as that. And I think almost all teaching artists have those kinds of stories. And even more complex ones, Ellen.
I have one, and it just so changed me. This was many, many years ago, early on in my teaching artist career. I was working at a school in Santa Monica with some kids, emotionally disturbed, a lot of issues. And with my background in special ed, I was, very comfortable with these kids. And a lot of acting out, a lot of oppositional behavior. But, we pushed through it. We did a show. And then I get a note from one of the kids. She's on this note, she wrote, "Thank you. I am no longer a monster." And that just told me that what I was doing was what I was supposed to be doing. That she was able to join us on stage and perform and didn't feel like a monster anymore. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you get big moments like that as a teaching artist, and you just clutch them, keep them in your heart. They keep you going. They really do.
I often have this experience with classroom teachers being really surprised at who I choose as line leaders. Because I'll, kind of watch out and who's really got the dance, and we want them to lead it when I stop doing the movement so that the kids can all remember together. And I'll, this person, and I'll choose the line leaders, and they'll do fabulous, And the teachers are just like, I can't believe it, like so-and-so always acts out or doesn't, do whatever we're supposed to be doing, or so-and-so is so quiet and just sits in the corner, or whatever it is. But like giving them the chance to express themselves through movement can work for so many different kids in different ways. And so to be able to see that, kids have been boxed or like labeled in their classrooms and in their worlds. And sometimes as artists, we can go in and help bust those open a little bit and help everybody around them see those kids a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll say something. As a teaching artist who tends to work in specific areas with specific demographics, knowing as a person of usually those demographics of those areas, these places that we grow up in tend to be ridden with cycles. And a lot of times teaching artists who don't live or interact with those communities may not know that stepping into them. But a lot of the communities that I spent time in growing up are full of cycles, whether that be one-parent households, kids raising kids, siblings raising siblings, no after-school programming, no way to express yourself, or like cycles of being forced into programs you don't want to be a part of and not having the ability to choose. And so I know that as a teaching artist, like my goal, and I never assume, but one of my goals is to go in and to create a new cycle. Cycles of joy, cycles of fun, cycles of expression, instead of continuing those cycles that maybe those students need to escape from, and giving them a place of escapism and freedom. So yeah, I think that's a part of the lasting impact of a lot of the teaching artist programs that are ongoing.
Well, I think just by the fact that everybody is so ready to speak to this, right, you're getting the bigger premise of the question here, right, which is you will be fed in ways other than financially, right? There is magic connected to this work, right? And we will have those moments where, I do my drumming, singing, and dancing from Ghana residency, and a mom will come up to me after the performance, like practically in tears, going, "You don't know what it means for my son to have self-selected to get up with the dancers and dance, right? These are those moments as a teacher where you're just like, oh, just hugging that moment, right? Feeding the soul. And there have been so many. I had an amazing time when Stomp came to do a residency at the Segerstrom Center. And I had been teaching at a school for deaf and hard of hearing students for the center as well for a few years, and Stomp they were going to come to the school to do a thing, right? And they got up there and they put on a little bit of a show, and the kids were just absolutely in love with them. And then they invited the kids up, and just standing in the back of the room, seeing all of my students that I've worked with, feeling like I make music. That's what I do, right? It doesn't matter that I'm deaf. It doesn't matter that I'm hard of hearing. Them self-identifying as music makers and just jumping up on the stage and getting right in there with all the artists from Stomp and feeling like they belonged, right? And it's just story after story, working in juvenile justice facilities with kids that they were in their teens but were tried as adults, right? So they were just housed in the juvenile justice facility until they're old enough to actually get put into the prisons with the other adults. And we got into we were doing Ghanaian drumming, but my hook in was recording some of their own rhyming and hip hop and just creating, like you were saying, an hour and a half in the day when they just got to be artists, when they just got to rhyme, when they just got to have fun. And so there are so many things where this work will feed your soul, right? And it's not to romanticize it. It's early mornings and a lot of driving and sometimes a bit of a lonely profession, but you have these moments along the way that are just like, man, if I were selling widgets, I would not get to have a moment like this.
Yeah. I think this particular question, Dr. Lopez, could be number 2 in our series of Teaching Artist Talks, I think, because there is so much to unpack in this part of the conversation, I think.
I love it. We have a few minutes before we transition into Act 3, and I always find it, a real way to distill and land, but also to give a gift to our panelists. What's resonating for you right now? What do you feel you're going to take out of this room? And what would you love to hear more of?
I see a hand at the back.
Mine's more nuts and bolts. I'm just curious, are you hired on an hourly wage? Are you hired per class? Do you have any sense of job security? Do you have to get different kinds of credentials for different kinds of programs? Just those kinds of basic questions.
We have a question asking the nuts and bolts about how one is compensated for their teaching artistry, the security of the employment, and do you need different certification to enter into this work?
I'll speak a little bit just about Segerstrom Center for the Arts. It's done different ways in different organizations. At Segerstrom Center for the Arts, we have our Studio D, and my colleagues are here who may correct me at any moment if I say something wrong. But they are the teaching artists in that area of our work are part-time employees. So they work as part-time employees of the center. They have to go through all of the checks and backgrounds that employees of the center go through. And it's my understanding that they're paid hourly for their work. Some of them are certified physical therapists and different kinds of therapists, and they are required to have those to do the job, but not all of them have those certifications depending on the kind of work they're doing. Now, as far as the work in the education department, we hire independent contractors. All of the folks here are independent contractors. They get to set their own fees, and they get paid depending on whether they're doing a residency, an assembly, or a workshop. They get paid by the class or by the day, depending on that. But no certifications are needed for the work that we're doing in our department. Anything you all want to add? from other organizations?
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know so much from, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same for the LA Music Center, and when we were doing all the arts for all the kids in Fullerton, it's kind of like we're booked for classes, so we're paid per class, and we get like, say, maybe a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, or here's where the flexibility comes in, because like I'm trading in my job security for my flexibility. So I can say, you know what, for the month of March, I'm out, I'm on tour. Or I can say, like, I can only be available Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursdays, I gotta do my art, or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't feel like there's much job security, but it pays relatively well compared to a lot of other jobs that I could be doing, right? So that when I'm doing it, I feel very well compensated, and I feel like I have a lot of choice over what I can do and when I want to do it.
Mm-hmm. I'll speak to that too. It varies depending on the program that you're teaching and who you're teaching for. Sometimes it's hourly that I get paid. Sometimes I get paid if I teach 5 40-minute sessions, and there's a fee for each session, and then that will be one check. For the school that I'm teaching at now, if anybody is a student and looking to teach too in Orange County, I mean Segerstrom, and I teach for Orange County School of the Arts, and in order to teach at any public or charter school in California, you are required to have your teaching credential. Orange County School of the Arts is paying for my teaching credential and is paying me to sit down and take the class. So there are lots of opportunities, and that school, which is very widespread visually, culinary arts, all types of things, where you'll get paid to actually still continue in school, and once you have that credential, you can continue to teach in other places. I feel like I have financial security because I learned how to save, and one thing that you actually taught me in my last year here was set your price. No, you taught me that. Set your price. So, I have the ability to save money now, which is a big blessing. But also just finding programs like OSHA that will help you, that will say, we support your artistry. We know that there are certain requirements by the state. So all of the teaching, most of the people who teach there are teaching artists, and they pay for your credential. And there are some programs that you'll teach for that will offer you that. And it may not be necessary to have that as a 1099 contractor, but if you ever were to want to work more full-time or to get your certification, there are places, and it doesn't necessarily have to be OSHA, but there are places that will support you as a teaching artist and help you fund that as well, if that were something you wanted to pursue.
I'll quickly throw 2 things out there. Never got a teaching credential, not for purposely not getting one, just sort of got out there and started navigating life without it. Of course, there's some work that's off the table without having the credential, but there's lots of work that's still on the table without having the credential. I wanted to quickly say about the job security, you are trading in a bit of that for the luxury of, like, I'm going to be on tour next month, so I'm gone. I will immediately back that up also along the lines of what you were saying. Once you're out there for long enough and you're doing strong work, you'll be as busy as you want to be. Right, so it took a little while, and you have to lean into the work, and you have to geek out on the pedagogy of it, but it's just like anything else. You distinguish yourself, you will be as busy as you want to be. So there really came a time where I felt like the sacrifice of security sort of was off the table. Because of that, I had the luxury of choosing. The last thing I wanted to say was about what Google words do we throw out there. Something I would encourage all of you to do in terms of finding teaching work, but even in terms of your own artistic work. I talk to my students a lot about this. Find other people who've walked a path similar to the one you want to walk. Now you can research them. Look at their bios. Where did they work? What grants did they find? What organizations did they work with? Right? And I have gotten so many opportunities by just kind of coming to something like this and hearing about an artist who was interesting, going home, throwing him into Google, pulling up some bios, researching some of the grants that they had, places they've worked. So I would encourage you to look for the institutions, but also look for individuals who've maybe walked a similar path to what you want to walk, and do a bit of research, or even hit them up for a cup of coffee, right? Especially if you're not calling them because you want to gig in their recording studio, but instead you're hitting them up because you'd like a little bit of advice. People tend to be pretty open about that.
Can I also say something else about the last thing you said? Find a mentor. Find a mentor. If you don't have one, mentors are so important. So I'm the vice president of mentorship for the UCI Black Alumni Chapter. So if you know any Black students that are in the theater department, we don't have any right now that are paired with a mentor. If you need a mentor, I'm the person who will connect you with UCI alum to kind of guide you on your path. So find a mentor. That would be one of my recommendations.
I love this practical advice. Thank you. We have time for one more burning question, and I know you had your hand up.
Jason, I'm a music teacher, middle school music teacher here in Irvine. I'm an IUSD music teacher. And I wanted to check to see, we're kind of in a unique space coming out of the pandemic, recently post-pandemic, in the middle school space. And now growing into Prop 28. There's a lot of kind of trying to figure out how to move forward. And I guess I'm wondering what our question is in this unique time. I'm finding a lot of middle school students specifically who didn't have the elementary experiences to understand that this is even a possibility to do anything. I mean, just in sheer numbers of students signing up for classes don't even know that they could. And I'm seeing that will eventually kind of pass through, but these students now in middle school and now going into high school have had such an interrupted opportunity to reach some of these arts. I feel like we're seeing a young person, a student kind of with this sense of, I don't know I can do this, so I'm not going to do this. And then in this pivot point, we also have access to what we hope is transformative in Prop 28. So I'm wondering, what can we do as an overall community through the Orange County Department of Ed, through arts organizations, through the university system? What can we do here in Orange County to really facilitate a better communication between what can our teaching artists that are established, what are the ones that are coming up now? What can we do even in the next 3 years to specifically, or 5-year plan to say, what do you need now that we suddenly have resources, where we now have some facilities so that individual teachers could advocate for their site to say, my school needs this, and I now have some potential funding if other people aren't advocating for those funds to go someplace else, for some other things. What can we do to connect better at the middle school level, the high school level, even the elementary school level? Because I feel like, especially now in middle school, the elementary schools have advocacy through K-6. The high schools have booster programs. The middle school almost never has anything, structurally speaking. It's kind of this really nebulous part. That's where the students are identifying as individuals, as creative artists, as, oh, I could do something. But through the pandemic, I feel like there was that almost implosion of, oh, now I can't do anything. Like, I don't know what opportunities there are. So again, I guess I'm just wondering, what can we do at this pivot point?
So I'm going to distill that so we have that on the archive video. So we heard from a middle school music teacher. Really, the invitation for us in having the conversation is, one, bringing a spotlight to the fact that it is very important that we're thinking about an ecosystem, very important about how we are creating points where we're regularly in conversation, and to think about how we're just broadening the ecosystem. Because the comment from the teacher on the front line is those middle school students, right when they're coming into a sense of their identity, thinking about the potential of seeing themselves as an artist, there is a gap with the resources, but also a gap in the time of being fostered coming out of the pandemic, and it'll take us several years to really regularly recover that groundwork in the stream of the teaching experience. So I'm hearing you say you want us to talk and connect more in Act 3, but I also see Talena, I imagine you have thoughts about that, so please share.
Quickly, Irvine has a visual and performing arts director coordinator at the district level. Brad Van Patten, who has been there for many, maybe 2 decades, has just retired, and there is a new person in that place who he spent an immense number of years working with. Your advocacy and your need for help, and I have taught middle school students, and I couldn't agree with you more. There is no age that needs the arts more than that awkward middle school period of time when they are beginning to make adult decisions. And the arts can provide a really, really healthy, organic pathway for them. So I would say to you, get in touch. Her name is Erin. Alexis, can you think of her last name? There we go. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of help there. Also behind you there, Scott Fitzpatrick at Orange County Department of Education has meetings regularly with a group we called OCMA, Orange County Music and Arts Administrators, I believe is that acronym. They're everywhere in your education world. And those conversations, I think, can also be useful to you. I don't know if you are attending those meetings or even have the capacity to take time to attend those meetings. But I do think that we've often had teachers be part of those conversations over the course of the time that group has existed. And also, honestly, I'm going to just tell you quickly about a project we did with IUSD probably 7 or 8 years ago now, where we the district worked with Segerstrom Center because we had the capacity to do a huge project to go into 28, however many elementary schools were in Irvine at the time. And it was in a couple of grades to put visual arts back into Irvine schools, which hadn't been there for decades. And we went in and we worked with the teachers and administrators and the principals over the course of 2 years. They hired visual arts teachers to go into those roles, and we pulled out. That's how this work should be done. We should be helping your district build capacity around the arts. And our teaching artists can help with that. So these are conversations you can have with several people here in the room, and we may be able to help in some way to help you build more capacity around middle school. Thanks.
Thank you. This has been such an extraordinary Act 2, and I love that we have an Act 3, which is the larger conversation over food and drink to be able to connect with one another. I'm just so honored and excited about the Claire Trevor School of the Arts and UCI hosting this incredible conversation, and very, very appreciative of our my co-moderator, Talena Mara, and I want to thank our teams. I want to thank and recognize Megan Belmonte and her team. I want to thank and recognize Segerstrom Center's team on their end collaborating on this. And I just want to voice incredible appreciation for all of our teaching artists, to Andrew, Shani, Ellen, and Shyamala. Just thank you so much for so generously sharing of your experiences and your time to be here to impact everyone in this room, to recognize the importance of the role of the teaching artist and the possibilities ahead that we can pursue it with our creative wayfinding, find our pathways. And with that, I want to invite everyone to step outside for Act 3, and thank you, everyone, for being here for this conversation. I'm so looking forward to our further connecting over food and drink, and to our next conversation that will undoubtedly follow this one. So I'll see you outside. Thank you.